The ambient noise floor in my primary workspace registered at 14 decibels. It is the acoustic equivalent of a deep, undisturbed subterranean cave. I achieved this strict environmental control through 4 consecutive layers of mass-loaded vinyl, independently decoupled drywall mounted on resilient channels, and heavy, geometric acoustic baffling on every flat surface. My name is Dane Young. I am a sound engineer. I master commercial audio for major film studios, and I conduct highly classified forensic acoustic analysis for corporate legal firms. I live my life within the frequency spectrum. I am 31 years old, and I am perpetually, fundamentally exhausted. I work the graveyard shift because the municipal electrical grid is cleaner at night, producing significantly less 60 Hz hum in my sensitive analog equipment. It was 0300 hours on a Wednesday. A severe coastal storm was currently battering the exterior of our brutalist concrete apartment building. I could not physically hear the wind howling against the glass, but I could feel the low-end barometric pressure dropping rapidly in my sinuses. I was sitting at my primary mixing console, meticulously adjusting the parametric equalization on an isolated vocal track, when I felt a distinct, rhythmic physical vibration traveling directly through the heavy floorboards and up the cast-iron legs of my chair. It was not a structural anomaly or thunder. It was a knock. 3 sharp, frantic, heavily stressed impacts against my soundproofed front door. I pushed my heavy studio reference headphones off my ears, letting them hang loosely around my neck. I stood up, my spine cracking in the dead quiet of the room. I walked to the front door, disengaged the 2 heavy steel deadbolts, and pulled the acoustic seal open. Evelynn Rivera stood in the cold, flickering fluorescent light of the hallway. She lived in apartment 4A, directly across the corridor from my unit. She was 37 years old. She was a prominent investigative journalist and the primary host of a highly rated, independent true crime podcast. I knew this data because I instinctively recognized the specific tonal quality, the sibilance, and the vocal compression profile of her voice from her popular broadcasts. We had spoken exactly 3 times in 2 years, mostly regarding misdelivered packages and building maintenance schedules. I kept my distance. My world was strictly quiet and contained. Hers was intensely public and investigative. She did not look like a polished, confident media professional tonight. She wore a faded gray sweatshirt and loose, dark sweatpants. She was entirely barefoot on the cold concrete. Her dark hair was tangled in a chaotic knot. Her face was incredibly pale, and the dark, bruised circles under her eyes indicated extreme, prolonged sleep deprivation. Her hands were shaking at her sides. "I'm sorry," Evelynn whispered. Her voice was raspy, the vocal cords audibly strained from stress. "I know. It's 3 in the morning. I didn't know who else was awake in this building. I saw the faint light under your door sweep. You are experiencing a severe physiological stress response," I noted, my voice a low, gravelly monotone, devoid of unnecessary social pleasantries. "I rely on observational facts. Your respiratory rate is dangerously elevated. Your capillary refill is sluggish. I haven't slept in 4 consecutive days, Dane," she choked out, wrapping her arms tightly around her chest, physically attempting to hold herself together. "There is a noise in my apartment. A hum. It never stops. It's vibrating deep in the walls. It's making me physically sick." He told me I was crazy and threatened to fine me for nuisance calls. Am I crazy? I stepped past her into the hallway. I closed my eyes. I bypassed my standard auditory processing and engaged my physical, tactile senses. I felt it instantly, a steady, relentless, extremely low-frequency vibration traveling directly through the structural concrete slab of the building. It was sitting precisely at 40 Hz. It was a localized standing wave, a frequency designed specifically to bypass standard hearing and interact directly with the fluid in the inner ear, causing severe nausea, migraine headaches, and chronic insomnia. It was not a natural plumbing failure or a malfunctioning HVAC unit. "You are not crazy," I stated, opening my eyes and looking down at her. "You are being actively subjected to a targeted, low-frequency acoustic standing wave. It is weaponized sound." Evelynn slumped heavily against the hallway wall, a profound, terrifying wave of relief washing over her pale face simply because someone possessing technical authority finally validated her reality. "Make it stop, please. I just need it to stop. I will isolate the mechanical source of the frequency," I promised, keeping my tone perfectly level. "Currently, You require immediate, uninterrupted REM sleep. Your cognitive functions are actively degrading. I can't go back in there, she whispered, her eyes filling with exhausted, panicked tears. My head feels like it's going to split open. The walls are buzzing. You do not need to go back in there tonight, I said, but we must secure your environment. I will build an acoustic trench in your bedroom. I need access to your apartment. She nodded frantically, digging a key from her pocket with shaking fingers. She unlocked 4A and pushed the heavy door open. I stepped inside. The 40 hertz vibration was immediately oppressive. It hit my inner ear like a physical weight, creating an instant, sickening sensation of vertigo. I pulled a highly calibrated digital decibel meter and a portable frequency spectrum analyzer from the deep pockets of my work jacket. I walked slowly and methodically through her apartment, reading the digital output on the glowing screens. The structural resonance is originating directly from the floor beneath your bed, I noted, pointing a finger to the exact center of her master bedroom. Someone in the unit directly below yours has placed a high-wattage, commercial-grade subwoofer directly against their ceiling, pointing upward. Can you talk to the police? She asked, standing rigidly in the doorway of the bedroom, unwilling to enter the vibrating acoustic field. The local police lack the sophisticated technical equipment required to verify a low-frequency noise complaint. They will measure the ambient decibels, find nothing legally actionable, and deem it a civil dispute, I explained calmly. I put my digital meters away. I will not ask the police to intervene. I will physically decouple your bed from the architecture. I spent the next 3 hours engaged in heavy, grueling physical labor. I did not complain. I did not require breaks or coffee. I went down to my specialized, climate-controlled storage unit in the building's basement and hauled up heavy rolls of quarter-inch mass-loaded vinyl and thick, high-density neoprene decoupling mats. Evelynn watched me work from the hallway. She tried to step into the room to help me carry a massive, 70-pound roll of black vinyl. Drop it, I commanded softly, stepping in immediately and taking the crushing weight of the roll onto my own shoulders. You lack the core stability right now. You will severely strain your lumbar spine. I am built for bearing heavy weight. I systematically stripped her heavy wooden bed frame. I laid the thick neoprene mats directly over the vibrating floorboards, creating a primary absorption layer. I rolled the heavy mass-loaded vinyl over the mats, sealing the seams tightly with specialized acoustic foil tape. I essentially built a massive, floating platform to decouple her bed from the vibrating concrete structure of the building. By 0630 hours, the sun was beginning to rise through the gray storm clouds. I was sweating heavily, my dark t-shirt clinging uncomfortably to my chest. I placed her mattress back onto the newly constructed, decoupled platform. I retrieved my laptop and a highly sensitive omnidirectional measurement microphone from my apartment, setting it up on a small desk in the corner of her bedroom. Step onto the mat, I instructed, wiping my brow with the back of my arm. Evelynn walked cautiously into the room, wincing in anticipation of the hum, and stepped onto the black vinyl surface. She stood perfectly still. Her dark eyes widened in sheer disbelief. "It's gone," she whispered. The vibration was completely absorbed and dissipated by the dense, layered materials. The 40 hertz hum could no longer transfer kinetic energy into her body. I can't feel it at all. It's silent. The physical perimeter of the bed is secure, I confirmed, typing rapidly on my laptop to initiate an automated acoustic logging sequence. I'm setting up a localized telemetry log. I need to record the exact frequency shifts and timestamps to prove the noise is intentional and not a building defect. I must remain in this room to monitor the software parameters for the next few hours to establish a clean baseline. Evelynn looked at the bed, then looked at me. She saw the dark circles under my own eyes. She saw the sweat on my neck. She saw that I had been awake for over 30 consecutive hours. "You're shaking, Dane," she noted softly, her journalistic observation skills piercing through her own exhaustion. "You're dead on your feet. You need to sleep." "I need to monitor the telemetry," I replied stubbornly, pulling a rigid wooden chair over to the desk. "I will sit here. The software is logging the data automatically," Evelynn countered, her voice gaining a fraction of its usual authoritative strength. She pointed directly at the bed. "Get in the bed. Sleep." I froze. My entire body locked into a rigid posture of deep, profound discomfort. I am a solitary man. I do not share domestic space. I certainly do not share beds. I cannot do that, I stated, my voice dropping to a harsh gravel. I stared intensely at my laptop screen, avoiding her eyes. It's a king-sized mattress, Dane. There's plenty of room, she reasoned gently, misinterpreting my hesitation as simple politeness. You literally just spent 3 hours building me a sanctuary. Let me share it with you, please. I gripped the edge of the desk. The silence in the room felt incredibly heavy, pressing against my ribs. I had to expose my humiliating vulnerability or risk deeply offending the woman I was actively trying to protect. I do not sleep like a normal person, Evelynn, I admitted, the words feeling like jagged glass in my throat. I kept my back to her. My auditory cortex is hypersensitive. It is an occupational hazard from years of mastering extremely high-fidelity audio. I suffer from severe hyperacusis. The ambient noise of a normal room causes me physical pain when I try to rest. To achieve sleep, I require industrial-grade acoustic ear defenders. Furthermore, I require a heavy, 40-pound weighted compression vest to artificially suppress my central nervous system and prevent hypervigilance. I look absurd. I look institutionalized. I do not subject other people to my neuroses. The confession hung in the air, pathetic and raw. I waited for the awkward silence. I waited for her to awkwardly retract the offer, to politely agree that I should just sit in the chair. I heard her soft footsteps approach behind me. Dane, she said softly. Look at me. I slowly turned my head. Evelynn was standing 3 feet away. She was looking at me with an expression of unyielding empathy. There was zero pity in her eyes. There was only a mutual recognition of brokenness. I am a 37-year-old woman whose entire professional career is currently collapsing, she stated firmly, her voice steady. I haven't showered in 3 days. I am wearing sweatpants covered in coffee stains. When I am stressed, I grind my teeth so badly I have to wear an ugly plastic mouthguard, and I occasionally drool on my pillow. My life is a disaster right now. She took a step closer, holding my gaze. Promise me you won't judge my chaotic, messy life, she whispered. The raw vulnerability reciprocal. And I promise you, on my life, I will not judge your acoustic gear. Get in the bed, Dane. A tight, painful knot in the center of my chest, a knot I had carried for nearly a decade, suddenly and violently unraveled. I nodded once, a sharp, jerky motion. Okay. I walked across the hall to my apartment. I retrieved my specialized ear defenders and my heavy, black, canvas-weighted vest. I returned to her bedroom. I did not look at her as I strapped the heavy vest tightly across my chest and secured the thick, electronic ear defenders over my ears, sealing out the ambient world. I walked to the bed. I climbed in. I stayed rigidly on the far left side, my back perfectly straight, my hands folded securely over my chest, maintaining a vast expanse of empty mattress between us. Evelynn climbed into the bed. She did not take the center. She specifically laid down on the far right side her side, pulling the heavy duvet up to her chin. She reached over and clicked off the bedside lamp. The room plunged into darkness. The acoustic decoupling mat worked flawlessly. The bed was a silent, unmoving island. Even through the heavy suppression of my ear defenders, I could faintly feel the structural shifting of the mattress as her breathing slowed, deepening into a heavy, restorative rhythm. I lay in the dark. I was wearing 50 pounds of sensory deprivation gear. I was lying in a stranger's bed. But for the first time in my adult life, I did not feel entirely alone in the silence. The proximity was not a threat. It was an anchor. And in that profound, quiet, dark, it changed the fundamental rules of my life. At 1,100 hours, my internal biological clock woke me. I opened my eyes. The storm had passed, leaving a pale, gray light filtering through the blinds. I carefully unbuckled the weighted vest and removed the ear defenders, allowing the ambient sound of the room to return. Evelynn was already awake. She was sitting at the small desk, staring intently at my laptop screen. She wore her mouthguard. She pulled it out and set it on a napkin when she heard me sit up. "Good morning," she said, her voice significantly stronger, the raspiness fading. The telemetry software logged a massive spike at 0800 hours. The frequency shifted from 40 Hz to 60 Hz for 10 minutes, then shut off. He woke up and terminated the harassment cycle. I analyzed, rubbing my face, my muscles stiff from the rigid sleeping posture. We have the data. The attack is verifiable. I stood up, adjusting my shirt. I will return to my apartment and brew coffee. You require caffeine. 10 minutes later, we were sitting on opposite ends of my worn living room sofa. The coffee was dark and excessively strong. The silence was comfortable. Then, Evelynn's phone, resting on the coffee table, vibrated aggressively. It was a direct text message from her network manager. She opened it. The color instantly drained from her newly rested face, returning her to the pale, terrified state of the previous night. She handed the phone to me without a word. It was a link to an anonymous post on a major social media platform. The post contained a 2-minute audio clip. The caption read, "The real Evelynn Rivera, a journalistic fraud." I pressed play on the embedded audio file. It was Evelynn's voice. The recording sounded exactly like a hot mic capture before a live broadcast. In the clip, she clearly and distinctly admitted to maliciously falsifying critical evidence on her most famous investigative report, laughing cruelly about intentionally ruining an innocent man's life for podcast ratings. I looked up from the glowing screen. You did not say these words. It was not a question. It was a statement of empirical fact. Never, she whispered, her hands shaking so badly she had to set her coffee mug down on the table to avoid spilling the scalding liquid. It's a complete fabrication. But it sounds exactly like me. The cadence, the breath pauses, the specific inflection. He must have used a high-end AI voice clone or spliced old outtakes. He's trying to destroy my credibility before my major network contract renewal next week. If that audio goes viral, my career is over. The network will drop me today. I picked up the phone. I hit play again. I closed my eyes, engaging my deep forensic processing. I listened past the dominant vocal frequencies. I listened specifically to the noise floor. I listened to the microscopic ambient room tone buried beneath the speech. It is not an AI generation, I stated with calm certainty, handing the phone back to her. Modern AI models can synthesize room tone, but they struggle with phase continuity across complex environmental transients. This recording has distinct, jagged phase artifacts. He utilized destructive splicing. He took isolated phonetic words from hundreds of hours of your raw studio outtakes and manually cross-faded them together to construct a new narrative sentence. Can you prove it? She asked, sheer desperation edging into her voice. I am a forensic audio engineer, I replied, my voice a flat, steady rumble. I do not deal in assumptions or theories. I deal in raw waveforms. If a digital file is spliced, I will locate the digital scar tissue. We immediately relocated to my primary workstation. I booted up the massive, custom-built PC. The dual curved monitors flared to life, casting a stark blue glow across the black acoustic wedges on the wall. I routed the audio output directly through my high-fidelity, flat-response studio monitors. Send me the raw audio file from the social media link, I instructed. She forwarded the file. I dropped it into my digital audio workstation software, Isotope RX. The screen instantly filled with a complex, multicolored visual representation of the sound wave. For the next 4 hours, we existed in a state of intense, highly focused operational flow. I did not speak unless it was strictly necessary for data collection. I isolated the vocal track, expanding the waveform until I was looking at individual, microscopic milliseconds of sound. Evelynn sat in a chair pulled close to my desk. She didn't interrupt my process. She possessed a brilliant, analytical mind, and she quickly grasped the methodology of my forensic dissection. At 1,530 hours, the tension in the room spiked catastrophically. Evelynn's phone rang loudly. It was her network executive, Marcus. She answered it on speakerphone, placing the device on my mixing desk. Evelynn. Marcus's voice was tight, echoing with corporate panic. Vance just emailed the entire board of directors the full, unedited audio file. He formally claims you admitted to federal libel. The legal department is losing their minds. The network is officially suspending your podcast, effective immediately. If you cannot provide definitive proof that this audio is maliciously manipulated within 24 hours, we are terminating your contract. The call ended with a sharp, definitive click. Evelynn stared at the phone. She buried her face in her hands. I'm done, she whispered, a harsh, brittle, broken sound. He won. Even if we prove it's fake, the PR damage is already done. The network won't risk the liability. It's over. I hit the heavy spacebar on my mechanical keyboard, stopping the audio playback abruptly. The silence in my studio felt heavy. I require a factual baseline, I said slowly, turning my heavy chair to face her. Did Vance possess administrative access to your raw, unedited studio recordings? Evelynn lifted her head. Her eyes were red, the fight draining out of her. Yes, she admitted, the painful truth slipping out. When I fired him 2 weeks ago, I was supposed to revoke his server credentials immediately, but I felt guilty. We built the show together. I thought if I gave him a few days to download his personal files, it would soften the blow. I was trying to be kind. He used that window to download 3 years of my isolated vocal outtakes. She looked at me, waiting for the harsh judgment, waiting for me to tell her she was foolish and naive. Guilt is a highly inefficient operating mechanism, I stated plainly, my voice a low, steady rumble, devoid of judgment. It caused a breach in your security protocol. The breach has occurred. The data was stolen. We cannot alter the past timeline. We can only address the current signal path. I stood up. I walked to the small kitchenette. I pulled a cold bottle of water from the fridge and brought it back to her, pressing it into her hands. Drink, I instructed. She took the bottle, her fingers cold against mine. You aren't going to tell me I ruined my own life? I am a sound engineer, Evelynn, I replied, sitting back down at the console, my eyes locking onto the monitors. I do not judge the source audio. I simply clean the track. Do not quit. We have 23 hours remaining. The next 48 hours blurred into a continuous, relentless loop of data extraction. 2 days, 4 hours of sleep total. We lived on black coffee and high-resolution waveforms. I utilized a high-resolution spectral frequency display to analyze the ambient background noise buried beneath her synthesized voice. At 0400 hours on Friday morning, I found the definitive proof. Look at the screen, I commanded, my voice raspy from lack of use. Evelynn leaned in quickly, her shoulder pressing firmly against my arm. I did not pull away from the contact. The warmth was grounding. Between the word falsified and the word evidence, I pointed a pen to a microscopic vertical line in the spectral display, a hard, unnatural break in the ambient noise frequencies. Vance executed a zero crossfade to hide the audio splice, but he failed to account for the noise print changing between phonemes. In the first word, the background HVAC profile registers a steady spectral coherence. In the second word, the phase continuity breaks, and the ambient noise print shifts abruptly. The acoustic environment changed in exactly 2 milliseconds. That represents a clear, distinct digital splice. Evelynn stared at the glowing screen, her breath catching in her throat. You found it. I found 27 distinct, malicious splices, I corrected, hitting a sequence of keys to generate a massive, highly detailed PDF forensic report, complete with visual spectrograms, phase cancellation graphs, and dense technical analysis. The file is a crude fabrication. The mathematical proof is established. We can email this report to the network right now, she said, hope finally reigniting in her voice. A PDF report is easily dismissed by panicked corporate lawyers who lack technical literacy. I countered, pulling my heavy canvas work jacket off the back of my chair. We are not going to send a passive email. We are going to establish undeniable public leverage. Friday morning. The corporate headquarters of Evelyn's broadcasting network was an intimidating glass-walled skyscraper in the center of the city. We walked through the revolving front doors. I wore a clean, dark button-down shirt and my heavy canvas work jacket. I carried my encrypted laptop and a heavy, portable, high-fidelity studio monitor speaker. I looked exactly like a blue-collar laborer trespassing in a pristine corporate sanctuary. I did not care. Evelynn walked beside me. She wore a sharp, tailored, professional blazer. She looked terrifyingly competent. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, righteous anger. We bypassed the receptionist and took the secure elevator directly to the executive boardroom on the 40th floor. We walked forcefully through the heavy double doors. The network executive, Marcus, sat at the head of a long, frosted glass table, surrounded by 3 corporate lawyers in expensive suits. Vance sat near the window, looking smug and victorious. He assumed Evelynn had come to quietly negotiate a severance package. Evelynn, Marcus sighed, looking annoyed by the sudden intrusion. You are currently under formal suspension. This meeting is highly irregular. I am not here to negotiate a surrender, Evelynn stated, her voice ringing out with clarity, commanding the room effortlessly. I did not sit down. I walked directly to the center of the table. I placed the heavy studio monitor onto the glass surface with a dull thud. I connected it to my laptop with a thick XLR cable and booted the forensic software system. Who is this individual? One of the lawyers demanded sharply, adjusting his tie. He does not have security clearance for this floor. I am Dane Young, I replied, my voice a deep, flat rumble that immediately killed the remaining chatter in the room. I am a formally retained forensic acoustic engineer. I am here to execute a live demonstration of severe digital fraud. Vance jumped up from his chair, his face flushing red. Don't listen to him. She hired a neighborhood handyman to lie for her. I ignored his outburst entirely. I tapped my mechanical keyboard. The heavy studio monitor roared to life, playing the viral audio clip Vance had leaked. The sound was pristine, high definition, and incredibly loud in the confined space. You have all heard this file, I announced. I hit a button on the software interface, instantly isolating a specific 3-second segment of the audio. I will now computationally strip away the primary vocal frequencies, isolating only the ambient noise floor beneath the speech. I engaged a phase cancellation plugin. Evelynn's voice vanished entirely from the playback. What remained was a harsh, jagged, wildly fluctuating background hum that cut in and out violently, shifting pitches erratically with every spliced word. It sounded like a severely broken, glitching machine. What you are hearing is the digital scar tissue of a maliciously fabricated audio file, I dictated, staring dead-eyed at the corporate lawyers, holding their full attention. I have mathematically identified 27 distinct edit points. The spectral coherence is unnatural. The phase continuity is broken. The recording is a forgery. I pulled a thick stack of printed, highly detailed forensic spectrograms from my bag and slid them aggressively across the glass table. Mr. Vance utilized thousands of hours of proprietary network outtakes to illegally construct this defamatory file. I continued relentlessly, stepping toward Vance, utilizing my physical size to project unyielding dominance. He committed a severe breach of your network's data security. This is documented data exfiltration and intellectual property theft. If you terminate Miss Rivera's contract based on a provably manipulated file, my firm will assist her in initiating a massive civil suit for wrongful termination. Exposing this network to severe legal and public liability, the boardroom fell into a suffocating, crushing silence. The heavy reality of the legal trap had snapped shut around Vance. The lead lawyer stared intently at the printed spectrograms, then looked up at Vance with sheer horror. Richard, did you fabricate that audio? It's a trick, Vance stammered, backing away from the table, his hands shaking violently. He's manipulating the audio right now! He's using an equalizer! Audio mathematics cannot be faked in a live, phase-canceled playback, I stated, issuing the final blow to his defense. The proof is documented. You are ruined. The network executive didn't hesitate. Survival instinct kicked in immediately. Mr. Vance, you are permanently banned from this building. Our legal department will be initiating a criminal referral regarding the data exfiltration. Get out. Vance looked at the hard data resting on the table. He realized he was utterly, comprehensively defeated. He turned and practically ran out of the boardroom, the door slamming behind him. I disconnected the heavy monitor, packed my thick cables methodically, and closed my laptop with a sharp click. The suspension is lifted, the executive said quickly, looking at Evelynn with a newfound, terrified respect. We will issue a public press release within the hour clearing your name, citing the forensic evidence provided by your engineer. See that you do, Evelynn replied coldly. We walked out of the corporate building and stepped onto the busy city sidewalk. The chaotic, deafening noise of the traffic surrounded us, but the internal atmosphere was profoundly still. The massive weight of the extortion had evaporated. Evelynn stopped near the edge of the curb. She turned to face me. The defensive armor she had worn for days was gone. She looked radiant, powerful, and incredibly free. You dismantled him, she said, her voice filled with quiet wonder. You walked into a room full of corporate lawyers and took apart his entire life using nothing but sound waves and math. He operated on a flawed psychological premise, I corrected, keeping my hands resting firmly on the heavy straps of my tool bag. He assumed you were isolated to technical manipulation. He failed to account for forensic reinforcement. He didn't know I had a master engineer in my corner. She smiled, stepping closer. The professional distance between us vanished on the crowded street. She reached out. She didn't shake my hand to offer formal thanks. She slid her hand gently down my arm, her fingers intertwining securely with mine. It was a concrete action, a public claim made in the open daylight. I froze. The sensory input spiked drastically. My heart rate elevated. A sudden, powerful rhythm drumming heavily against my ribs. I didn't pull away. I allowed the unexpected, terrifying connection to fully process. My apartment is quiet now, she noted, her voice dropping its sharp, professional edge, replacing it with a quiet loyalty. The structural hum is gone. The decoupling mats absorbed the physical kinetic transfer, I confirmed, my thumb lightly tracing the back of her knuckles. For the first time in years, my heart wasn't racing from exhaustion or the desperate need for isolation. It was racing simply because of the profound presence of the person standing in front of me. I know, Evelynn said softly, her dark eyes locked onto mine with certainty. But I realized something last night while I was working. The silence in my apartment is too loud now. I prefer the silence in your room. My room is highly atypical, I warned her gently, the rigid walls of my isolation dissolving under her touch. It requires specific gear. I prefer atypical systems, she promised, squeezing my hand tightly, anchoring me to the present moment. I am broadcasting a live clarification episode tonight at 2000 hours. I need a highly competent technical producer to monitor the signal path. I looked down at our joined hands, feeling the heavy, cynical weight I had carried for years finally dissipate into the noisy city air. I didn't need a perfectly soundproofed, isolated life anymore. I just needed one that was real. I will secure the audio feed, I replied. The end.